Training is a form of stress, and up to a certain point in time, exposing the body to stress can be beneficial. But beyond a definite period in time, it can actually be detrimental.
In bodybuilding, no concept is more misunderstood or misused than time. How often should you train? How long should you rest? How many days a week do you hit the gym? For most, the answers come not from reasoned thinking or scientific inquiry, but from inherited tradition, blind imitation, and a fear of stepping outside the lines. Mike Mentzer saw this, and he wanted to burn it all down. Mentzer's obsession with time had a Christopher Nolan-esque quality to it, a philosophical gravity, a fascination with how humans distort, waste, and weaponize time against themselves. For him, the way bodybuilders structured their training was less about biology and more about inherited myths carried forward like relics from a pre-scientific age.
Why do most bodybuilders train 6 days a week? It just so happens our forefathers adopted the Gregorian calendar, which consists of 7 days a week. And because our WASP descendants worked hard all week, they felt, and rightfully so, that they deserved a day of rest on the 7th day.
Let's pause and unpack that. The Julian calendar, instituted by Julius Caesar in 45 BCE, was based on a solar year of 365.25 days, adding a leap day every 4 years. But by the 16th century, it had drifted out of sync with the seasons. Enter Pope Gregory XIII, who reformed it in 1582 with what we now call the Gregorian calendar, trimming excess leap years and anchoring Easter more reliably in the spring. It also preserved the 7-day week, not for scientific reasons, but for continuity with religious tradition, tracing back to Babylonian astrology and Judeo-Christian theology. So bodybuilders today, they're not training 6 days and resting 1 because of biology. They're following a calendar rooted in papal decrees and ancient superstition. Mentzer found this laughable.
Had our esteemed forebearers chosen a 10-day week, they probably would have worked their asses off 9 days and rested the 10th. And so would present-day bodybuilders, who train almost entirely due to tradition, imitation, convention, and fear. The fear to be different from the rest, to stand out as an individual who is not only willing to think on his own, but refuses to do otherwise.
The faulty roots of training frequency. Mentzer didn't just criticize the present. He went after bodybuilding's founding fathers. First up, Bob Hoffman, often called the father of American weightlifting, who sold barbells in the 1920s and authored the training guides that accompanied them.
Bob Hoffman said everybody trained 3 times a week. Why not? It seems to be a number that works so well in so many other areas. 3 square meals a day. There's a Father, Son, a Holy Ghost. There's pyramid power. Some people actually believe there's a special magic with a pyramid or a triangle. That's mystical and has nothing to do with science.
To Mentzer, Hoffman wasn't reasoning. He was myth-making. 3 workouts a week wasn't a conclusion drawn from data, but from the mystical significance of the number 3 in Western culture. It was tradition dressed up as truth. Then came Joe Weider, founder of the modern bodybuilding empire and mentor to Arnold Schwarzenegger. Weider styled himself as the progressive alternative to Hoffman's old-school ways. But to Mentzer, Weider was no better, just louder.
Joe Weider said, I'm progressive. I'm a progressive individual. Don't train 3 times a week. More is better. Train 6 days a week. But he wasn't that progressive because he still suggested everybody takes Monday off for Sabbath. It's very scientific.
Both paradigms, Hoffman's 3 times a week and Weider's 6 days on, 1 day off, were equally unscientific, arbitrary, culturally inherited, and dangerous because they buried the most important principle of all, individual specificity. Precision, not tradition. For Mentzer, time was only meaningful if it tied directly to the individual's own biology, their capacity to recover and adapt.
We're not just looking to do less or to do what feels just about right. What we're looking for here, listener, is the precise amount of exercise required. The point is this: The human being is a specific entity with specific characteristics and specific requirements. The key concept there is specific.
And the specificity was not trivial. It wasn't a matter of preference. It was the core of scientific thinking.
I came to understand recently, during a period of more serious thought on this, that in fact the concept of specificity is the most important concept in science. The concept of specificity shapes and underlies the phenomena of rationality itself.
Some people can recover from a hard workout in 3 days. Others might need 7. Still others, 10 or more. To force all trainees into the same weekly mold was not just lazy, it was anti-scientific. The courage to break free. But the real obstacle wasn't physiology, it was psychology. Mentzer believed that most bodybuilders were shackled not by their muscle fibers, but by fear. Fear of standing out, fear of being different, fear of thinking critically.
Just as people vary enormously with regards to height and weight and intelligence and every other genetic trait, I'm beginning to see how widely people vary in regards to recovery ability. Some people just cannot tolerate exercise more than once every several, maybe even 10 days. Everybody is so darn hidebound, tradition-bound. Gee, you got to work out 3 times a week. Why? Because we eat 3 square meals a day.
Not more is better, not less is better, but precise is best.
Time reclaimed. Mike Mentzer redefined what time means in bodybuilding. Not hours in the gym, not days in the week, not more or less, but time as a biological variable tailored to the individual. Time as the space in which growth occurs, not through more effort, but through wiser effort. In the end, he was asking us to reclaim time, to stop being ruled by clocks, calendars, and convention, and to start living and lifting by reason.